Hey, what is up, fellow raiders? This is Vulcan Dan, and in today's Raid Shadow Legends video, we are going to talk about the absolute worst epics in each of these factions. Now, I will go through each of them, and I will tell you who I personally think is the absolute worst, the bottom of the barrel in each of these faction. Now, recently we've had a buff to some legendaries in the game, legendaries such as Crypt King Girl, Tomb Lord. So I think Plarium did a very good job on those legendaries, but epics, we have a lot of epics in this game that are absolutely horrible and they are in dire need of a buff, and we are going to go through these for each faction. Who is the worst epic in each one of these? All right, let's get to it. Number one for Bannerlords. Rowan, I think, is the worst epic in this faction. She has a heal reduction for her A1, triple hit stun on her A2, and a 4-hitter poison on her A3. Now, these skills are good on their own, but they don't really work well together. I don't really know where to use her. Now, this might be good for Fire Knight, might be good for Dragon, of course, with the poisons. This one doesn't really work on bosses, so this one is more on the waves, so I don't really know where to use her. Heal reduction is of course good in the Fire Knight, but it's a single hit A1, and the multi-hit is on her A4. So yeah, I don't really know where to use Rowan, so her kit could really use some rework. Alright, now for the High Elves, I think the worst epic here is Marksman. He has a poison in his A1 with a 15% chance of granting an extra turn, so that is quite decent. A2 fills the turn meter of all allies by 20% with an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. This sounds okay, but it's weird when you pair it with the A3. The A3 attacks 4 times at random. Each hit has a 25% chance to ignore defense. Now, this is not ignoring 25% of the defense. This has a 25% chance of ignoring 100% defense. Now, it sounds cool, but it's really a lot of RNG. This one, of course, has this 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit, so you might think, should I build him with 85% crit? But then, this is the skill that you want to be 100% chance to crit, but this one does not have the extra 15%. So if you're going to build him, you're going to build him with 100% crit rate anyways. I don't really see the point of his A2. You're just really looking forward to his A3 every single time it's on a 4-turn cooldown. But yeah, that's really all he has going for his kit. His only debuff is on his A1, so if you're going to build him with accuracy, it's only the A1 will benefit from that. So it's sort of a weird thing. Maybe they could rework this A2 to bring another form of debuff, maybe more poisons, maybe decreased defense. Yeah, so he just has a weird kit. He's not totally bad, but for the High Elves, he is the worst epic. Alright, now let's go to Sacred Order. I think the worst epic here is Lady Etessa. Now, Lady Etessa has this ally attack on her A3, but we do have a lot of other champions that have ally attack that does it a lot better than her. She attacks with 2 random allies on a 4-turn cooldown. Other epics do this a lot better, and her other skills are just single target. This one has a chance to place block buffs. This one has a chance to stun. That's really it. She does not have a single AoE skill, so I wouldn't really recommend building her up. She's not really she doesn't bring much use in any area in the game. Alright, moving on to the Barbarian faction. I think the worst epic here is Woad Painted. She has block active skill on her A1, block active skill on her A3, which is a good debuff, but these are both single target. Bellower, who is a rare, does this on an AoE hit with the same chance to land. Right now, her A2 removes debuffs from herself, heals herself, and places reflect damage on herself. This would be a lot better if she does this on the entire team and make her A3 an AoE hit as well. That would definitely make her a lot better. And that's it. That's really all you need to rework her skill to make her usable. All right, moving on to the Ogre Tribes. Now, this faction actually has a lot of decent epics. Even the bomb champions right here, these two are quite decent, even though bombs are not that good in this game. But I think the worst champion here, the worst epic, is Cagebreaker. Even though he is actually a lot better than the ones that I have mentioned in the other factions. He has this decreased defense A1, which is quite good, a 4 times random hitter on his A2 with a chance to sleep. Sleep is the worst out of the crowd control debuffs, but it's still a decent A2, and his A3 is an AoE hit that decreases each target's max HP by 50% of the damage inflicted and grants an extra turn if this attack kills an enemy. He is an attack type champion, so this one most likely will of course kill an enemy. So this is a decent A3. Decrease max HP is really used in the Scarab boss, so that one is not really that useful, but this one hits hard and you have that chance to give yourself an extra turn. Plus, this decreased defense is nice as well. Sleep is not that great, but you know, it's a decent A2. So he's not terrible, but for the Ogre Tribes, he is, I think, the worst epic. Okay, moving on to the Lizardmen. I think the worst epic here is Drake. Now, this guy is the fake Dracomorph. He has this attacks one enemy, grants an extra turn if the target is killed, so that's okay. A2, if the target has 30% or less than 30% HP, this attack is always critical, but his A3 places a decreased speed and decreased accuracy on all enemies except the target for 2 turns if this attack is critical. Now, of course, you do want to build him with 100% crit, so to make use of his A3, but then this would make his A2 quite pointless because of course you would always want to build him with 100% crit, so this one right here doesn't really make any sense at all. So the most useful part of his kit is his A3, but that is on a 5-turn cooldown and it is on a single target. Better make this an AoE skill. So yeah, so I think Drake is the worst epic in the Lizardmen faction. For Skinwalker, I think the worst one here is Ripper. Ripper has this decreased max HP on his A1, decrease max HP on his A3, although this one ignores 50% of the target's defense, so this one is a decent hard-hitting A3, but decreased max HP is really only usable in the Scarab boss, so not much use elsewhere, but he can be of use there if you're really struggling for decreased max HP. His A2 damage increases as the target's HP decreases, so decent A2, but yeah, all single target. And yeah, so it's really more of a Scarab boss champion, not really much use anywhere else. Alright, moving on to the Orcs. I think the worst epic here is Bone Keeper. Now, she does hit hard, but all of her hits are single target. Single target A1 with decreased defense, single target A2 with extra crit damage, and single target A3 with an extra hit if it is critical, and fills the turn meter of all allies by 15% if this kills an enemy. That is nice, but still it's a single target all in her A1, A2, and A3. Better bring an AoE hard hitter than bring or build up Bone Keeper. Alright, moving on. Demon Spawn. I think the worst epic here is, where is she? There you go. Tainix Hate Flower. She has this very tiny heal on her A1, and it has to hit targets under decreased speed. And her A2 right here places decreased speed on one enemy, but places this on all enemies if this attack is critical. So of course you're gonna build her with 100% crit. She doesn't really hit that hard, and her heals, which are conditional on landing on enemies that have decreased speed, are very tiny. So yeah, not really worth building her up. So you might think that she might be a good healer for your faction, and she is a free login reward champion, but in my opinion, she is not worth building up. Alright, so that's for Demon Spawn. For the Undead Horde, I think the worst one here is Balthus Druglord. Now this guy looks so cool, so I was quite disappointed at his kit. His passive right here reflects 30% of the damage this champion receives back to the attacker, so it's a built-in reflect damage, which sounds cool, but he is a defense-based champion, so you're going to build him with high defense. But if you do so, you're not going to take advantage of this reflect because you're not going to be reflecting a lot back to the champion. This would be a lot better if he was an HP-based champion. Now his A1 has a decreased attack, which is fine. A2 is an AoE hit that decreases crit rate. Not too useful there. A3 is a single hitter, single target provoke. Single target provoke on an A3 is quite weak. Single target provoke should really be on A1, not on an A3. So yeah, so if he could, or if Plarium could really improve his A3, make this an AoE hit. This one's okay. It's not great, but it's not terrible. And probably make him an HP based champion. That's really it. All right, who else do we have here? Dark Elves. I think for the Dark Elves, the worst one here is Delver. Has this heal reduction on his on her A1, weaken on her A2, but needs to have heal reduction on the target. AoE A3 places increased attack on this champion before attacking, which is nice. If the target has weaken, places a decreased defense on the target for 2 turns. So a lot of ifs. You can only place the weaken if there is a heal reduction. You can only place the decreased defense if there is a weaken. So yeah, so a lot of ifs. You can just simply remove those and she would be a lot better and definitely a usable champion with those small changes. Right, let's move on to Knight's Revenant. I think the worst epic here is, where is that? Pitiless One. All right, this one, of course, just a decent A1. A2 is an AoE hit that each critical hit boosts this champion's turn meter by 15%. So you might be thinking this works well in the Spider because you're basically granting yourself an extra turn if you build him with 100% crit. So that's okay, but granting himself an extra turn just means he'll go back to his A1, which is not that impressive. It's just okay. His passive has a built-in lifesteal. Each critical hit heals this champion by 15% of the damage inflicted. Okay, but not really, you know, you could just put him in a lifesteal gear and this would be pointless. So yeah, it's just his AoE A2 that goes back to his A1 and that's it. Not really much utility for this champion, so I don't really see the point in building Pitiless One. Right, moving on to the dwarves. Now, this faction has a lot of great epics. Most of these epics are really good. The worst one here is Bardal Fellhammer. Now, this guy is actually quite decent in the Fire Knight because he has heal reduction A1 with a double hitter, triple hitter A2 with decreased defense and a shield, and a passive that places counterattacks on him at the start of each turn. So he's very good for Fire Knight, but anywhere else he is terrible. That's it. All right. So lastly, for the Shadowkin faction. Now, this one, because it's a recent faction, they actually did a very good job with the epics here. So I had a really hard time looking for the absolute worst epic. So I think the worst one here is actually Taya, especially because she is a Void. So I expected more from a Void epic. She has a decreased accuracy A1, has a poison A2 with a triple hitter. So this one places 3 poisons, and A3 that attacks one enemy, 75% chance of instantly activating any poison and HP burn on the target, and places a heal reduction. So this one's okay, you know, it's not terrible. She will place a lot of poisons and she will explode all of those poisons. So this is more of a boss killer, but for the waves, she's not really that useful. She does not have any AoE hit. Um, and a lot of other champions do this job a lot better than her. But compared to the other epics that I mentioned in this list, she is not that bad. All right, so those are the worst epics in my opinion in each of the factions. I hope that they will do a rebalancing soon for a lot of these epics. Some of these are from way back and Plarium didn't even touch them, or maybe they gave them a buff, but it wasn't really that worthwhile. So I really hope that they do a rebalancing of the epics soon. All right, that is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next one.